Welcome to video number 12, working with multiple projectors. Now this is a pretty common thing that people are going to need to do. So I'm going to go a little bit further than we did in the introduction to zones and sort of show you exactly how you work with multiple projectors and how you can set up really nice large rigs of lasers and control them pretty easily. Okay, so as we did in the multiple zones video, we were going to have two different pieces of hardware here. Just as a quick reminder, these are FB3QS hardware pieces. SEs, XEs, whatever, they all do the same thing. They're digital to analog converters. They take in one set or group of information in the USB out of the Quickshow here, send it out, convert it into an analog signal and send it out through an ILDA cable either to a splitter or to a projector or whatever the case may be. But the point here is that everything connected to this DAC will do the same thing at the same time. If you want the projectors to do different things, you need to have more than one group of data so that each group can have its own set of commands. Particularly if you're going to use one projector that's very fast and one projector that's fairly slow, you want to make sure that you're sending out the data that's appropriate for those two different projector types. So let's just talk real fast about how what our wiring options are, how we can wire this all together. So the easiest thing to do is to just take one DAC to one cable to one projector and call it a day. However, that can get expensive and so on and so forth. So what people will do, especially if you want to have, say, 3 or 4 projectors that will all do the same thing at the same time, is that you'll use one DAC to one cable to an ILDA splitter. It'll take in the ILDA signal from this guy and split out 4 fully buffered ILDA signals, one of which goes to each projector, and then each projector will do the same thing at the same time. It's a really easy way of controlling multiple projectors off of one zone or one set of data. Alternately, for projectors that have a daisy chain, such as the Skyrider, you take one DAC to one cable, in on one Skyrider, daisy chain to the next unit, out in, just as you would any other light. And then all of those projectors connected to that zone or set of data will all do the same thing at the same time. Pretty straightforward. Again, if you want them to do different things, you got to have more than one of these guys. So let's talk about how exactly this works in a practical sense. Let's say that you're at a trade show or you're in a nightclub and you want to have one zone doing text and you want to have another zone that's going to do, let's say, aerial hot beams. All right, let's go over to our zone setup here and just look at what we have to start with. So we have scanner 1 main, that's 340, that's going to be this guy right here. And scanner 2 main, that's going to be 948, that's going to be this guy right here, okay? Good. And actually, just as a little tip, what we'll do is for rigs that we're going to use with some amount of consistency, we'll just go ahead and put little pieces of tape right here and say, this is the number of this DAC, so we don't constantly be having to flip them over. When you have 8 of them, it gets sort of unwieldy. Here's the number of this DAC, here's what this is going to, here's what this is going to, so that as you're running your cable, you know what's supposed to plug into what when you finally make your connections. Anyway, okay, let's say you're in a large trade show hall, right? And you're putting on a display with aerial lasers to attract people over to your booth, but you also want to do digital signage to say, hey, we're in booth whatever, 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 come and see us. Well, the way you would do that is with 2 different DACs. One DAC is going to output all of your beams and your fun aerial stuff. Your other DAC is going to output all of your text. And so what you'll end up doing is taking the text DAC, and instead of shooting it up into a black ceiling where no one can see it, you'll constrain it down to a much smaller area so that the text will scroll across the wall in a marquee. And then this guy, the aerial guy, can shoot up into the ceiling and whatever, and it doesn't really matter as long as it's not shooting within that required 3 meters of safety clearance for people. So you can do that with either one of these guys. You can flip cues around, and what you'll end up doing is assigning cues to project into a particular zone. And the way that you'll do this is by this. You'll say, okay, this is a hot beam pattern, right? Okay, so I have a hot beam zone. If I go to Settings, Zones, you'll see here that there is a default zone for hot beams, and right now it's putting out exactly where it should to projector 1. That means if I click one of these patterns, it's only going to fire to this DAC. And I'll show you that right now. I'll click OK, and boom, and it's only firing to projector number 1, which is going up here to the Skyrider. If I want to change that and send it to both projectors, all I have to do is right-click, Q properties, and change the zone. Now I can either send it to hot beams and number 2, which will send it to here and here, or I can turn off hot beams and set it to zone 1 and 2. It doesn't matter, because remember, the hot beam zone is outputting here, as is zone 1. So either a zone 1 or 8, no problem. Whatever you want to do. I click close, I close the queue, I relaunch it, and now both lasers are firing the same queue. But under this example that we're using, we only want it to go to projector number 1. So we're going to turn these guys off and put it only into the hot beam zone, close it, and then it'll only fire from projector number 1. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do something with text, and we're going to get some quick text going here. And oh look, we already have X laser. Let's apply a little effect to X laser. We'll do a little 3D scroll effect right here. We'll go ahead and drag this up here. We like that Q, and we press that Q, and that looks like it's coming out of zone number 1, which is no good because we want it to go into our text zone. So we'll turn off number 1, turn on number 2, close it, relaunch the effect, and now it's coming out of our X-beam. That's basically how zones work. And you have quite a number of zones to work with, and you can connect up to, I believe it's 8 or 9 of these DACs to one instance of Quickshow. 2 caveats. Most computers don't have 8 or 9 USB ports. A powered USB hub works really, really nicely. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, the more of these you connect, the more memory and resources you're asking for from the computer. So if you're going to be using a whole bunch of them, you want to make sure you have some pretty heavy memory going on in that computer. And then once you do, you can basically just do this. Multi-queue. You've already got the text going from the X-beam down there, and boom, there you go. You have a hot beam effect and the text both running at the same time. But there's a problem. The X-beam is an area laser. It'll do text okay, but not great, and that text is not so great. It could be better, right? So we'll probably want to put the text in the Skywriter and put the beams into the X-beam. So to do that, we very simply just do this. Right-click, Q properties. We're going to take it out of the hot beam zone and send it to the X-beam, which is number 2. And then we're going to take this guy and send it out of number 2 and into number 1. So now if I close both of these and relaunch them, the beams are down the bottom and the text is scrolling across the top. Really simple, really straightforward. I want to just make one more point a little bit clear in the projection zone dialog. Each one of these zones will be output to a specific piece of hardware, in this case, either this guy or this guy. So you can choose to send hot beams to projector 2, which would mean that anything else that's on this page, if I were to also say launch this guy, would then send hot beams out to the projector 2 zone. You can customize this any way you want to get any combination of zones for any particular set of effects. And we're going to talk about this more when we get into working with multiple projectors.